talking all things New York Giants live with the Entertainah. That's coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Stand up, everybody. We've got the newly slimmed down Entertainah. Chris, my friend, you're looking really good. Whatever your secret is, you're going to have to email it to me offline.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm down 48 pounds, and I made it. I want to get down to my high school weight. That was my goal. When I saw my weight, I'm like, I'm going to go for it all in. So I still got a ways to go, but thank you. I appreciate it. Been putting on a lot of hard work at the gym.
And see, and I've gone the opposite. You know, for those who don't know, I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and my energy just got sapped. So the steps that I was doing, the 5 miles plus a day.
So you've been doing the steps? That's good.
I had been doing the steps, and if anything, I've been sleeping more. So when you sleep and you eat and you're not burning it off, guess what happens? You pack on the pounds. So, but
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yep. Look, it was a long haul. Still have some side effects that I'm still shaking, including the occasional. It's going to sound like my voice goes out a little bit, but we're going to go as long as we can today. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of Giant stuff. Guys and gals, those of you joining us here in the chat, you know what to do. If you got questions, comments, just drop them right in the chat, and we'll get to them throughout the show. So, Chris, let's start things off with the roster. Still a work in progress, but your overall take on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, outside of yesterday, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the podcast. There wasn't any real surprises to me. I mean, I saw a lot of Giants fans on Twitter flipping out about Quincy Roche. To me, like, he's a back end of the roster guy. He's a guy that was not brought in by this new regime. He's not necessarily the best scheme fit. So for me, that wasn't very surprising. He was the third and fourth string guy throughout training camp, throughout preseason. It was clearly evident they had Zimenez ahead of him. So it seemed like that was the fan base's biggest surprise. But outside of that, I didn't really see many surprises. I mean, we went with 7 wide receivers. A lot of people thought we might trade Darius Slayton for salary cap purposes. That didn't happen, at least yet. And it sounds like, according to Shane, that it probably won't. It looks like he's going to be part of the roster going into the year, which I'm happy about. We're really thin at that wide receiving core in terms of guys that have injury problems, so he certainly could bring some value. And Dable said that he was going to have 5 wide sets this year. He's a guy that could extend the field, opens up the middle of the field for guys like Tony. So I think he definitely has value on this team. So there wasn't really many shockers for me. There just really wasn't. And I didn't expect there to be. So yeah, that's my overall take. I like for the most part, I like the guys they chose as the 53.
You weren't surprised that they didn't keep Alex Bachman?
I was not. I will say the one, and he didn't end up sticking, I don't think. I think they ended up cutting him. But Fox was a surprise for me. I didn't think he'd make the initial 53, even though I liked how he looked at preseason. But Bachman, when I looked at our receiving core, and I think when we talked on Twitter, I said it, and I know the fans loved him in week 2. He had like 120 yards, and he had a great game, and he's really, fought hard the last couple of years to make this Giants team. But look at our receiving core. I mean, you got Sterling Shepard. He's a slot. You have Kaderius Toney. He's a guy that can work the middle. You got Richie James. You got Wan'Dale Robinson. I looked at it. I'm like, what value does Alex Bachman really bring at the back end of this receiving core that we don't already have with 4 or 5 other receivers already on this team? So I just think he was a victim of circumstance, that he didn't really he wasn't a need. And I know that he looked pretty good in special teams. He had that nice tackle. I was a bit surprised we didn't bring him back on the practice squad. But I wasn't surprised that he didn't make the 53.
Well, actually, for the practice squad, I think they wanted to bring him back, but I think he wanted to explore his options around the league.
Which is a good idea, I think, for him. I think it's a good idea.
And regarding Slayton, the information that I got, for what it's worth, and I got this from maybe a secondhand source here, but Shane apparently wanted a solid pick for him, meaning not a conditional pick.
Okay.
So if you think back to, I think it was last year.
Santoso, yeah.
Yeah. So when they traded Santoso, that was a conditional pick. If he had been on the roster for 4 weeks, then they would have gotten the pick. Excuse me. He wasn't on the roster, so therefore the pick was nullified. So I think some of the picks or some of the offers they were getting were for conditional picks, and I don't think Shane wanted to do that. And credit to him, because he's not going to settle just for the sake of settling.
Yeah. And you last year, look at the conditional pick. I mean, we didn't get anything for Ryan Santoso, so
Right.
I guess it would depend on the conditions of the trade. But yeah, I'm happy he's back. I expected him not to be, based off of the salary cap, because we all know that now they're going to have to backload Leonard Williams. I think we got about $5 million or $4.5 million that we got to find a way to shed before the start of the regular season. That, like you said in the Twitter live, that's really that's the most obvious name right now in terms of being able to restructure. So I think a lot of us looked at it and said, well, you could save $1.8 million when you factor in the guy that's going to replace him on the top 51 of the salary cap by moving on from Darius Slayton via trade. So that's why I think a lot of us expected it. But there's no doubt in my mind, Darius Slayton is one of the top 5 receivers on this football team. And he certainly adds value, as a depth piece at the wide receiving core. And you could argue that the wide receiver position is our most injury plagued position on this roster. So I do think he definitely adds value, and I'm glad that Shane didn't just trade him for nothing.
And here's something else that they could do, talking about making cap space. If they really wanted to, and not that this is going to move the needle a whole lot, but you want to lower Slayton's number, you just give him a dummy year, you add a voidable year on, you take some of the base salary, turn it into a signing bonus, and that'll clear some space out for you as well.
Yeah. But you hurt next year's cap by doing that, right?
Yeah, but you know what? They're going to have no choice. That's how bad this cap situation is.
Somebody, yeah, they're gonna have to pick Leonard Williams. I think it'll be Leonard. Like, I think
I've been saying that. Yeah,
yeah.
You don't want to touch that Galladay contract, because that contract, gosh, the sooner they can get out of it, the better. Because that's an ugly contract.
And I think Galladay, and I know everybody's been riding Galladay, rightfully so. He didn't produce last year. But I don't think this is an ideal circumstance for Galladay either. If I was Galladay, and by no means am I saying that I hope he does not try this year, because he better. But next year, I think it's in his best interest to get cut by the Giants, because next year there's a good chance you're looking at a rookie quarterback in a scheme that he doesn't really fit. So I just feel like there's better options for him out there on the open market next year. So I just don't think it's a good fit. Once we brought in Kafka, Dable, I don't think he fits the scheme.
No, I agree with you. And that's why I don't think Galladay's here next year. And the sooner they can get out of that contract, the better. So this is a couple of years it's going to take them to really, clean up this cap. It'll be better next year, but still not optimal. So, and Shane basically said it. He said it's been tying their hands as to what they can do. And you see it. You have these injuries and they're bringing in guys off the street, and, there were still question marks.
It's really similar to last year, where
it really is.
Where we were picking up everybody's scraps, specifically on the offensive line, right? We picked up like 5 guys right before the year started, so it's not quite as bad. We didn't pick up like 3 starting offensive linemen right before the year started, but it's eerily similar, which it tells you, if you're being honest with yourself as a fan, where we are as a football team. We're picking up guys from other teams that they didn't want. What does that tell you about, our overall depth as a football team? We're thin.
Exactly. They still don't know who the starting left guard is going to be, which is a concern. You want that offensive line gelling at this point, and you can't really say that that's been the case.
Who do you think the starter's going to be week 1?
I'm wondering if it's going to be this kid that they just picked up. Oh gosh, what's his name now? It's
the guy they got yesterday. I know you're I can't remember his name.
Wiley? No, not Wiley.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he can play every position on the line too.
It's the guy that started out with Buffalo, went to the Eagles.
Yeah.
Anderson,
oh no, I thought you were talking about somebody else. Yeah.
Is it Anderson?
Yep, I think it's Anderson. Yeah. He was drafted in the 7th round by Shane last year with the Bills.
Yeah. I mean, and you notice with these pickups and whatnot, a lot of them have ties to either Buffalo or Baltimore. Yeah. You see a pattern here.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same pattern we saw with Petra. They brought in all Arizona guys. The same pattern we saw with obviously Graham and Judge. They brought in a lot of, the Logan Ryans of the world. They brought in a lot of guys. Blake Martinez. had ties to Patrick Graham while he was with the Packers. So it's kind of what you expect, especially when you bring in the first year. You want to have guys that are familiar to teach the guys on the team, what you're looking to do as an offensive defense. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Jefferson obviously has ties with Wink, could help the young secondary. Feliciano, I think that had a lot to do with it, right? Because he's coming over from the Buffalo Bills, could help mentor some of the young offensive linemen in terms of the blocking scheme. So it's status quo. It's kind of what you expect year one of a new regime.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, other surprises for me, and, you saw it coming, but I still don't understand why. And maybe you could shed some light on this. Why O'Shane Ximines over Quincy Roche?
Yeah, that was the big thing. And people are going crazy about it. And listen, if I'm going to put my trust in this regime, and when I say trust, I think some people get it like misconstrued. It's not like I'm saying like I'm going to agree with everything Joe Shane does, or I'm going to have blind faith. Like, I'm going to be critical when I feel like he deserves criticism. But at the same time, I'm going to put trust in the process. I'm going to give this guy a real opportunity to build this team. So if I'm going to do that year one, I'm not going to go crazy over a back end of the roster decision. And I understand as a fan base, we've seen Ximines hasn't done much in the NFL for the Giants on game day. And Roche showed at least some promise last year when given an opportunity. He was a player I really liked when the Giants picked him up. But I think it comes down to scheme at the end of the day. I think that was the deciding factor with why they preferred Ximines to Roche.
And also you can say that Ximines is slightly more athletic, I think, than Roche.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that he could do more. He could do more things. Like you said, he's more athletic. You could use him in more ways than you could use Quincy Roche. And we should have expected this. It was right there in front of our faces the entire time. He was the second string edge rusher the entire training camp, where Roche was like fourth string. So I wasn't surprised. And I think, like I said, I think it's a scheme thing more than anything else.
All right. I got to do this. I got to put this comment on the screen here because there's been some discussion in the chat about Leonard Williams' contract and Kenny Galladay's contract. So I got to address this. All right.
Yeah.
Director Zay saying Galladay is the 18th highest paid receiver. His contract isn't as bad as the narrative. Leonard Williams, though. Zay, dude. Galladay isn't producing. Leonard Williams is. All right. If the guy is producing, I have no problem with the contract.
Yeah, here's what I'll say about Galladay's contract, Zay. I think he has some valid point there. And just speaking specifically about Galladay, look at the wide receiver market this past year, right? By no means has he lived up to the contract at all. It's been a massive failure so far. But look at the wide receiver market this past year. Christian Kirk got like $20 million a year. You've seen, and it's only going to continue to go up. So like right now, Galladay's 18th. Next year, he might be like 30th with some of the contracts these wide receivers are getting. So to Zay's point, if Galladay is pretty good this year, like 800 yards, stays healthy, 6 or 7 touchdowns, yeah, you probably keep him based off the wide receiver market rather than saving just $6 million. But if he is a complete flop like he was last year and you feel like he doesn't fit the scheme, you move on. Right. So I can kind of see where you're going with that, Zay. But yeah, I'm not going to compare him to Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams produced last year. I'm not saying he had the 11.5 sacks he had the year before, but he produced. He's still a very good defensive lineman and arguably the best player in our defense. He's a good football player. So he produced. Galladay didn't.
I don't understand. I see, excuse me. I see this on Twitter. People want to cut Leonard Williams. Explain to me why. The guy is producing. Now you're going to have a more aggressive scheme. I get it. The numbers weren't up there with the sacks, but he had career high in tackles and stuff like that. And also you forget that he was injured for part of last year, which affected him.
Yeah.
Why do people want to get rid of Leonard Williams so badly? I don't understand.
You know what it is? I think it's the cap savings. That's the reason. I don't think it's because they think he's a.
But you create a hole, though. It's kind of.
No, I agree. I was going to get to that. Like next year, you look at that. You go on Spot Track and you say, "Oh my God, we saved $18 million if we cut Leonard Williams." But like you said, you are taking off arguably, if not the best, definitely one of the top 3 players on our defense. You're not going to just replace him, and it's only 2 more years after this year. It's not like you're committed to him forever. He has to produce this year. If he's bad, yeah, you cut him, you save the $18 million. But I think fans always look at the cap and they say, oh my God, we could go out there in free agency, go on a spending spree. But they don't look at it like the cap goes up every year. $18 million next year is not going to be as worth as much as $18 million this year. It's only going to continue to go up. If Leonard Williams is a good player, you keep him. Now, maybe you extend him and redistribute the money so he's not going as much against the cap next year as he is, if you could do it in a cost-effective manner. But I'm with you. I think if Leo stays healthy this year, there's no reason to think he's not going to produce. I mean, you look at our defense, in terms of the scheme itself, it's going to be aggressive. We add Kayvon Thibodeau. Hopefully he's out on the field week 1, maybe if not week 2. You have Azeez Ojulari on the other side. So those guys are going to garnish a lot of attention. That should only help a guy like Leonard Williams. So I think Leo is going to have a good year this year for the Giants. If there is one guy in the defense that I'm pretty confident with, outside of probably McKinney, it's him. I think Leonard Williams is going to have a good year for the Giants. Yeah.
Well, then the reason why that contract hasn't been done yet is it's in the works. So don't make any assumptions about Leo's definitely going to be gone or not. See, what I would do, and I wrote about this on Giants Country, if anybody wants to check out the article, is I would tack on a voidable year to Leo's contract. Again, I know it's kicking money down the road, but that's how bad this cap situation is. And I know
so basically what you're saying is you would keep.
I would keep him.
What's Leonard Williams' contract this year?
Let me look it up. Let me see.
I'll look it up real quick. I can find it. It's I got you.
I got it right here. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. So this year he's got a cap number of $27.3 million.
Oh, he's only on contract for one more year after this year.
Right. Oh. Next year he's got $26.3 million, but he's got no guaranteed money. So you tack on an extra year, and you can redistribute it a little bit.
I'm looking at it right now. So I see a 27.3 cap hit this year, a 26.3 cap hit last year, which is obviously because they backloaded everybody's contract significantly last year to get under the cap when they signed Golladay, when they signed Adoree Jackson, and it's a mess. I like your idea of, say, taking $2 or $3 million off of this year's cap hit and $2 or $3 million off of next year's cap hit and having like a $5 million voidable year, like you said. And it's going to hurt in 2 years. But in 2 years, $5 million is not going to be as
right, because the cap's going to go up.
The cap's going to go up. So I think that's the proper approach. I think that's what they're going to do. So I think that's a good idea by you, actually. I think that's smart thinking.
And let's see. I think it was your dad, Rosario, asked what the salary cap space is going to be for the NFL. So in 2023, the base cap is estimated at $225 million. In 2024, it's going to be $256 million.
That big of a jump, really? We're going to have $31 million.
Yeah. So that's, you're going to have room to absorb some of this kicking the can down the road.
And unfortunately, that's what you have to do. But it is what it is. The way I look at it is, we're going to have enough, especially if we move on from Daniel Jones, which we'll see. That's yet to be determined. But if you're not paying a quarterback $50 million a year, you got to do something to try to keep some of these players on the roster. So I think there's creative avenues that they could do it. But you got to be selective with the players you do it with. But I think Leonard Williams is one of those players where he's still relatively young. He's a good player. He fits the defense. I think he makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not committing any more years.
Yeah, exactly. You put the voidable year in there, and he still gets to be a free agent like he wants to be. So
yeah.
All right. Cody wants to know about what do you like Schoen to do for scouting 2023 prospects? What players do you like? Cody, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't looked. I couldn't tell you. I don't think I could name 5 players that are prospects. I mean, seriously, I just came off of training camp. I'm kind of in regular season mode now.
Yeah.
I'll get there as the year goes on and as college football starts up, but I couldn't give you names of prospects right now that I'm sitting here and saying, yeah, they got to check out this guy, that guy, and that guy.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Just real quick, Chris. I like that Sheen's getting out on the road.
Yeah.
And doing, the job.
He's going to the game tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. So same thing as you. I'm definitely going to make it more of a point this year to focus on college football more than I have in the past. I'm actually looking forward to sitting down and watching a lot of the games this week, and I'm definitely going to be watching that Notre Dame game. against Ohio State with C.J. Stroud. I also probably going to want to watch that Gators game. They're going against, I think, Utah at 7 o'clock. Anthony Richardson's going to be obviously playing in that game, and he's a quarterback you want to keep your eye on, if we're looking at quarterbacks. So I'm definitely going to make it a point to try to watch as much college football as I can this year. I'm not, there's going to be times I want to enjoy my Saturdays, but maybe I tape the games and watch it back after the fact. But yeah, right now it's just way too early for me to even speculate which prospects we're going to be. We don't know where we're picking. We don't know what our needs are going to be at the end of the year. We have to see how these players perform at all these positions. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really fun offseason this year. But first, let's have a really fun regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I see some more questions that are popping up, but before we get to them, we got to talk about this Blake Martinez move, which I think caused a lot of people to say, holy smokes. But in retrospect, Chris, was the handwriting on the wall? I mean, for me, when I went back and sat down and thought about it, the handwriting kind of was on the wall, and it made me wonder if Martinez was going to be a part of this team. And, I'm kind of kicking myself for not seeing it, but, there was a report that this was a mutual decision between the two sides, but it just seemed like the handwriting was on the wall. I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I was initially surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I was. And because of the timing, it happened so late. It happened 10 days before the start of the regular season. But in terms of if you would have told me before the restructure, is Blake Martinez going to be back with the Giants? I would have said no. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he fits the scheme. He's coming off an ACL tear. You could save a little bit of money if you move off of him. But once he did the restructure, I thought he was going to be with the team at the start of the year. But it's not something I'm going to flip out about. It was more so just like an initial surprise. Because when you look at our linebacking core, Darian Beavers is now out for the year. And what do we really have? I mean, you got Micah McFadden, who's looked mediocre, throughout the preseason, and some of the write-ups you said, you've seen through training camp. You got Tate Crowder and you got Carter Coughlin. So you're you figured Blake Martinez was going to start the year as a Giant, but do I understand why he's not back from a scheme perspective? Yeah. It didn't save us much money, though, which was kind of like why you were scratching your head. And I always thought Blake Martinez stood a good chance to be replaced in season this year. If the Giants struggle, you want to see what the young players got. And I think as a fan base, we got to realize it's year one of a rebuild. And the Giants are trying to view their younger talent and guys that they feel fit the defense better. And we don't know the full story. I think Jordan Renan came out yesterday and said that it was kind of a mutual decision.
Yeah, I can fill in some of the gaps there. I think it was a common. First of all, let's go back. A lot of people say, well, if they knew they weren't going to keep him, why did they restructure him? They restructured him in March before the draft. So they didn't know that they were going to get a Darian Beavers or a Micah McFadden. All right. So they did that. That was one of the early moves that they made. It was insurance. And also remember, they were still putting the staff together. They were still putting together what they were going to do. So I don't know how far into, the film study the coaches got. I just know that Shane saw, holy smokes, I better clear some cap space. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do anything. Mm-hmm. So it was the timing of that. Now, when you saw the ACL, he was limited. That was a factor. I don't think he was ultra crazy about taking a pay cut because, the thinking is, well, it's not my fault I got hurt. It just happened on the job. Then you have,
and he already did by restructuring, right? He kind of did take a pay cut.
And then you had the fact that the defensive signal calling went, which was his job. They took that away and they gave it to Xavier McKinney and the safeties. You throw in the fact that he wasn't voted a captain, which he had been the last 2 years. And finally, and the reduction in his snaps in the preseason, which weren't all because of the ACL. So all those things kind of added up to where, it was just like, hey, where do I fit in here? I don't think I fit in. Let's go our separate ways.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to Logan Ryan. I think that's why Logan Ryan probably departed too, is he didn't see the fit with this team this year. He sees that they're in rebuild mode. He wanted a chance to make the best out of a situation. So best of luck to Blake. He always seemed like a really good guy. Very fan friendly on social media. I always say that, and I wish him the best. It just wasn't a good fit, and we move on. And we hope that these young guys, could grow throughout the year. And the other thing is, the more I think about it, the more I think the middle linebacker position is not the most important position in a wing.
Not in this defense, no.
So Does it hurt us a bit? Yeah, he's a veteran. He was probably our best linebacker going in. He was our best linebacker going into the year. But I don't think it's going to have near as an effect as some fans may think.
Yeah. All right. Let's take some questions here because I see the comments are kind of backing up because I kind of paused them here. Let's start off with the Neymar Sekhorn, and I'm sure we're going to get this question a lot. Will Barkley be on the team next year? I would say at this point, it's up in the air, but I will say this. If you would ask me earlier in the year who would be on the team next year, Daniel Jones or Barkley, I probably would have said Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking now maybe Barkley has a better chance if he balls out. Now, Barkley, as everybody knows, he came out with that, defiant, I'm going to be good. I don't care what you say, attitude. My response to that is, talk is cheap, play the game and show us. And I think he's determined. I think he's healthy. But you know what, Chris, we have heard this from Barkley before. We heard it last year. We've heard it in the past. And, shut up and just do it.
Here's what I'll say about Barkley. I do believe he's back. I said going into last year, I did not think he was back yet mentally. I thought that was going to be his biggest obstacle. And I did not think you would see vintage Shaquan Barkley last year. This year, I think you will. But for me to fully answer that question, he's got to get lucky. Because at the end of the day, especially at the running back position, to stay entirely healthy, regardless of how mentally strong you are, physically strong you are, you got to get lucky to stay healthy for a full 17-game season. You just do. And he's going to be the focal point of this offense. And if he has any kind of injury, he steps on somebody's foot, twists his ankle, a freak injury like he had last year against the Dallas Cowboys, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
So he's got to get lucky. He's got to stay healthy for 17 games. But what I will say, if he stays healthy for 17 games in this scheme, I do believe Barkley's going to have a big year. And I do agree with your sentiment that there is a higher probability that Barkley is back than Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I mean, now I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I hope I am. I hope both of them are back, but that's how I kind of see it. I don't think you could pay the two of them big money. I think you're going to have to choose between one or the other. And that's going to be a very interesting decision that Joe Shane is going to have to make. All right, Jorge Gomez, if the team isn't winning, how long, before the team decides to tank for a quarterback, trade players like Williams and Galladay? All right, first off, Jorge, I don't like the whole idea of tanking for a player. I mean, any team that does that should be thrown out of the league. I'm sorry. Don't even say how long until they tank. You saw what happened with the Dolphins and how they got slapped on, they got hit hard for allegedly tanking. So don't even go there. We don't want to lose draft picks.
We might not.
No.
We're probably not going to be very good, but we're not tanking.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as far as a fire sale goes, again, it really depends. I mean, Galladay, who's going to take on that contract? Nobody's going to probably take that contract on in their right mind. All right. Williams, if he's productive, why would you want to create a hole? I mean, I get it. Have a fire sale, but that's not a guy I would necessarily trade away.
And even if you wanted to, I think it's similar to Galladay in the sense that how many teams can afford to take on $27 million on their payroll for next year?
Well, it's going to be prorated. Don't forget. I mean this year would be prorated, and then next year. But yeah.
So it's like I don't know how many teams are going to be knocked. I think the most tradable piece on this team, if I'm being honest, if he's playing really well at the trade deadline, would be Shaquan Barkley. I think he's the most tradable piece because he's not making an obscene amount of money. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so you're not committing a lot of your future cap to him. And if Barkley looks like 2018 Barkley and the Giants don't feel he's in the best long-term interest of this team, which I don't know what Joe Shane's thinking, and a team feels like he's a piece that could put them over the top, I could see a team giving up something to get Shaquan Barkley. But I think he's the most likely scenario personally at the trade deadline if he's playing really well and the Giants are playing really bad.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Papa Guzzo says we need a solid number 2 cornerback. I guess you're not a fan of Aaron Robinson, huh? So what do you think, Chris? I mean, Aaron Robinson looked good in practice, but was it a matter of him looking good in practice or the receivers looking bad?
I want to root for Aaron Robinson. I really do. He's a Giant, so I hope he's great. I hope he's really good, but I don't think he's it. I really don't, and I hope I'm wrong.
I don't think he belongs on the
I don't
outside.
think he's a slot guy. I
He's
think
a slot guy,
he's playing out
absolutely.
of position. But it's going to be get ready for Giants fans. It's going to be he's going to get the first crack. We'll see how he does. And I think they're going to give him some time. And then maybe they put in Cordell Flott. Maybe they move Julian Love if they feel Flott's not ready. We'll see. But I think that's going to be, on defense at least, that's going to be our biggest weakness this year. No doubt about it.
And by the way, as a lesson, folks, the Giants had to get rid of James Bradberry. The very same, you guys are saying, oh, get rid of Leonard Williams. This is what I'm talking about. You don't trade away a talent or get rid of a talent and create a huge hole for yourself. Look at what happened with Bradberry. They had no choice but to move Bradberry because they needed the money. Excuse me. So those of you who keep proposing that they do that with Leonard Williams, I just don't get the logic here. So that's a perfect example here. All right, Director Zay again. Do you think Daniel Jones has what it takes to earn a contract? You know what? He played well in the preseason, but I also keep in mind that he wasn't throwing to probably a lot of the receivers he will be throwing to in the beginning of the year.
It also wasn't.
He was also going up against second and third string players on the opposite team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cautiously optimistic, but realistically speaking, I would be shocked if, especially how deep the quarterback class is projected to be in the draft. If you're Shane and Dable and okay, this year we're evaluating because we couldn't do anything. We couldn't really start our rebuild. Mm-hmm. You start the rebuild in earnest next year with a new quarterback. You've got a healthier salary cap. That's when you really start putting the pieces together. Right now, they're just kind of tinkering a little bit because they can't do a lot with the cap situation being what it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If it wasn't the exact circumstances it was this offseason, Jones probably isn't the quarterback. Usually when a GM comes in, they want to take their guy, especially when a quarterback has struggled, even though we all agree that it's not mainly Daniel Jones' fault. There's so many other factors. I agree with what John Mara said. They completely failed Jones. They did not support Jones. But when you inherit a team where the guy's been there for 3 years, hasn't done a lot of winning, you want to take your quarterback. It just so happened that there was not a quarterback worth taking. Where we were picking, we had no cap space. So Jones gets another year. Do I think he has what it takes? I think there's a scenario where Jones could be back next year. I don't think there's a scenario where Jones will get a contract extension after this year. I think there's a scenario where he could get a franchise tag.
Right.
Which would be the Giants have to have a winning record. They have to win like 9 games. He has to put them in a position where they are not in a spot to draft a quarterback they love. And Jones plays well enough to say, okay, we'll roll with you for another year. We'll see if you can continue to grow. But I don't foresee a scenario outside of Daniel Jones just playing like Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen, which I obviously don't expect, where the Giants extend him on like a 4 or 5 year extension. I don't see that.
No.
And I obviously am with you that I think it's more likely that he will not be back next year. But I'm not ruling that out. I do see at least a possibility that he could be franchise tagged.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And again, a lot has to happen. People always ask, well, what statistics does he have to have? You can't really look at statistics. And the question came up yesterday with Shane and Dable, and pretty much the answer was the same. The decision-making process, can you score points, and that comes down to the decision-making process. You can look good between the 20s, but if you can't get the ball into the end zone, what good is it? So there's a lot of factors, a lot of room for interpretation, and we'll just have to see.
One thing I will say this, and I might have egg on my face at the end of the year, and this is based off the fact he stays healthy because of all the surrounding factors and the parts. And I do think he'll start off slow in the offense in general. I do think this will be Daniel Jones' best year as a pro. I will say that. I
if he stays healthy.
If he stays healthy, I do think this will be Daniel Jones' best year as a pro. But I don't foresee a scenario where he's good enough to get a extension. That's what
right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And if he does get an extension, you're talking a very modest one, like a David, not David
Carr,
like
where
a
you can get it
Derek
after
Carr.
1 year.
Yeah.
it's basically a franchise tag or a contract where you could get out after 1 year if he doesn't continue to excel.
Exactly. All right, folks, I got to take one quick commercial break. I just have one commercial I have to run during the show. This will be about 30 seconds. We'll be right back after this. Hey, Giant fans, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the games start. All right, we're back here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. We've got the Entertainah stand up. You know, I'm going to come
up, New York Giant fans.
I have got to come up with a catchy opening and closing. I've been podcasting for so long.
You got to do what I do at the beginning of my videos too. You should do that in one of your videos, just to make people laugh. Oh, what is going on, football fans?
I can't even come close to doing it as well as you. I feel like it would be a ripoff. But seriously, if anybody has a great opening or closing suggestion for me,
we need a.
I need something.
Somebody said it on Twitter like a couple days ago. They were not the first person to come up with the name. People have said it in our stream before and on Twitter before. We need a little jingle at the beginning of the show. Tana and Trainer. We need a little jingle.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if anybody out there, I'm not that creative with that stuff, but if anybody wants to submit something, I'll play it on the show every time we have a joint show.
Let's do it.
So I'm open for that. Absolutely. So, all right, let's get back to your questions, everybody. Let's see. Neymar Saquon, is Mike Kafka going to be calling plays? All right. Brian Daboll has not made that announcement, but look.
I thought he did.
Did he?
Not recently. He made it like a month ago, I thought.
No. I don't think he did.
Or maybe he hinted at it. Maybe he didn't make it official.
Well, what I was going to say is Kafka's been calling them since the spring. He called them in the summer and in the preseason. At this point, does it make sense to say, oh, sorry, Mike, you're not calling plays for the regular season? Yeah. I think it's going to be him. But I don't think Daboll has officially said, yes, it's definitely going to be him. But on Monday, when we get Coach Daboll, I'll see if I remember to ask that question, because that is a valid question. I don't know if he'll reveal it, but
I think he's got to be calling plays. I said it all along. Once we brought in Kafka, this was a guy that was really sought after by a lot of teams. When we brought him in, there was like 4 of the teams, over the last 2 or 3 years that really wanted him. And I think if he just stayed in Kansas City, he was in line to get a good position there, right? Once Andy Reid retired, whether it be the head coach or the offensive coordinator. So I don't think he would have left that position, being the quarterback coach for Pat Mahomes, like the easiest, safest job in the world to get, good progression throughout your career, as in demand as he was as a coach, if he was not going to be calling the plays for the New York Giants. So yeah, I thought all along Kafka's going to be calling the plays. And it seems like this offense, at least, Patty, is like more, and I definitely think Daboll's involved, no doubt about it. Yeah. But I think it's more Chiefs influenced, if that makes sense, from what we've seen so far. So I definitely think Kafka's going to be calling the plays.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Jack Smith has a comment. What concerns me is if the Giants win 7 or 8 games and lose the opportunity to draft a stud quarterback, so Jones may be back on the franchise tag. Jack, not necessarily, because Shane is trying to stock up on draft picks. I think he gets a couple of comp picks next year. If he really wanted to, he could engineer an Eli Manning-like trade if there was a guy he wanted. I know it's kind of premature to talk about it because we don't know what the draft order is, but don't rule that out. I mean, look, a few years ago, the Chiefs traded up from 20 to 10 to get Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
So if there's a guy that they have a conviction on, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, unless the Giants just don't have a first round pick at all to where they can trade up, but I wouldn't sweat it.
Yeah, they're gonna have a first round. I think it depends on where we're picking, because I do think there's a point in the draft where it's going to be hard for us to trade up, because there are a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks this year, because none of them were picked last year. There's probably going to be like 13, 14 teams that are potentially interested in a quarterback if the right quarterback's there. So we'll see where we're picking. But at the end of the day, if we win 9 or 10 games, that means Daniel Jones was good this year. Because this team's not winning 9 or 10 games unless Daniel Jones is good. We're not a good enough football team to win 9 or 10 games unless Daniel Jones is a good quarterback this year. So that means that we're sticking with Jones for another year if we win 9 or 10 games. And you see what you could continue to do in that aspect. But I'm with you in the sense that if we win like 7 or less games, we're drafting a quarterback. We're going to find a way to get the quarterback that we want. And there's going to be a good amount, according to pretty much every expert in this year's class, to choose from. So we'll find a way. If we're picking inside the top 10 to 13, we'll move up a little bit and go out and get our guy. So we'll see at the end of the year.
Yep, absolutely. Still a little too early to speculate on that, but they could always do, like I said, an Eli Manning type of blockbuster trade if need be.
Yeah.
All right. Joshua asked, do you like locker room interviews better? Does it make it any harder to get information from players or coaches? Joshua, I love the locker room interviews. It makes it easier. You can build up relationships with guys. See, like when you don't have the locker room, which we haven't had the last 2 years, basically you got to rely on the PR staff to bring you the guys that you want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past, like, excuse me, you'd have, like, say, for example, everybody would gather around Saquon. And it's like, okay, Saquon's going to get transcribed. And, oh, maybe I don't have anything I'm going to ask Saquon. So if I see another player sitting at his locker, maybe I go over there and I talk to that guy. And it's all about relationship building. So absolutely being in the locker room makes a big difference. And I'm glad that that's back this year. So, my take, Chris, I know you don't get into the locker room, but maybe one day.
Hey, maybe one day. Maybe one day they're like, we could let this guy in. We could deal.
Maybe one day if Entertainah gets picked up, nationally,
That'd be cool, man. That'd be cool if I get to talk to the players. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. Neymar Sickhorn says he has an idea for victory money. All right, send it to me. The address is in the show notes, LockedOn Giants podcast at gmail.com. So send it to me. Sorry, folks. My voice, you can tell my voice is starting to fade here a little bit. So I'm going to hold out as best as I can. Okay. Good one here from your dad, Papa Guzzo. I want to see Wan'Dale Robinson get involved. He's a tough dude. Yeah, I think he's one of the guys that they kind of held back on. They didn't want to, spoil what they had planned for him. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited about what this kid can bring.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and how they're going to utilize him in the offense. I'm not going to come out with unrealistic statistic predictions, but I'm excited to see what his role in the offense is going to be. You saw it a little bit in the last couple of preseason games. They tried to use him in motion, a lot of bubble screens. They used him on an end around in the third preseason game. But I don't think we've seen the full effect of how they're going to really use him in this offense. I think there's going to be a lot more creativity, a lot more pre-snap mode, not just with him, with Tony, with Barkley. They have a lot of chess pieces, a lot of guys that could do damage after the catch, and he's certainly one of them. So I'm excited. I'm excited for Wan'Dale. I think he'd be a really nice player for the Giants. And he'll never be a number one receiver, at least in my opinion. But I think he could be a really nice player for the New York Giants and a guy that you really have to account for if you're the opposition.
And speaking of number one receivers, I forget who asked it, but I saw earlier somebody said, will Kaderius Toney ever be a number one receiver? I don't see that happening.
It's possible, but
I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he will be. I want too many injury concerns with him, first off. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. Like, the guy hasn't been able to stay on the field. I mean, he's been banged up his entire career. Anything's possible. I think he has a lot of talent. But do I see like an Odell level talent? No, I don't see that. I think people jumped the gun last year when they said that, but I think he'd be a very good receiver if he could stay on the football field, which I have doubts that he can. Obviously he's going to have games where he plays, but I think he appears to be the type of player that's going to be riddled with injuries. Like in his collegiate career, he missed in 3 out of the 4 seasons, he missed parts of the seasons. Last year he had injuries. This year he's already been banged up in training camp. So that's my biggest worry with Tony, more so than anything else. Like, people point to like his off the field stuff. I'm not really too worried about that. It's his injuries. Like, he's got to stay healthy, man. He's got to stay healthy.
Yeah. Speaking of Odell, a lot of people say, "Oh, bring him back, bring him back." I don't know, man. I like Odell. Let me make that clear. But I think that ship has sailed. Do you agree, or do you see a scenario where maybe they bring him back?
It doesn't make sense for this year's team. Outside of just like appealing to the fans, so they could have, they could be like, Odell's back, I'm excited, but it doesn't make sense for this year. He tore his ACL in February, so like I think it was his ACL, or was it his MCL?
Yeah, I think so.
So generally speaking, that's a year recovery, isn't it? So like, if he's gonna play, it's not going to be at the start of the year. It's going to be maybe in December or November, maybe at the earliest. So what's this? We're not a team that's going to compete for a Super Bowl this year. So when that came out, I'm like, this is just nonsense that people are, use it because there's nothing else to talk about. But it doesn't make any sense to me to bring Odell back, especially this year. And even next year, I don't think it's going to make a lot of sense because we're going to have a rookie quarterback more than likely. If you're Odell, don't think about it just from the Giants' perspective. Why would you want to play for the Giants? Why would you, when you have the opportunity to play potentially for Pat Mahomes? They need receiver help. When you have the opportunity to play potentially for the Rams again with McVay and Stafford, and you're playing for another contract because you're going to only be able to sign a one-year deal coming off the injury that you had, why would you want to pick the Giants? So the whole Odell thing to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than that he started his career with the New York Giants. But I don't think it makes sense for the Giants, and I don't think it makes sense for Odell. I mean, we've seen Odell, and I'm not trying to knock Odell. It's most receivers. If they're in a situation with a quarterback that doesn't get them the football, that's struggling, they're not going to be happy. He wasn't happy with Mayfield. He's probably not going to be happy with a rookie quarterback. So I just don't think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. And, just one of those things where they just want to, I guess, go back and capture what we once had, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We've got some more questions. Ruben Sanabria, will Kaderius Toney be ready for the season opener? Well, according to Tony, he will be, but still to be determined. That they're optimistic that he will be, but let's see what he shows up on the practice report next week. I think that he's probably going to be limited on the practice report, and I got to get a feel for how this coaching staff kind of operates with the practice report. Because under Judge, I kind of knew if a guy showed up as limited, and if he was limited 2 days, I kind of got a feel for, and I would say, oh, he's not going to play or whatever. So it's going to take me some time to get a grasp on it, but the hope is that Kaderius Toney will be ready for the season opener. And, here's the other thing, you got to talk about matchups because they are going to look at matchups. And Chris, I don't know if you've done any scouting yet on the Titans, but who would you feature in the offense against that Titans defense?
I have not looked too much into it. I know their best edge rusher is now out. He tore his ACL. So, but. And I think they have one of the better interior defensive lines in football. So we may struggle running the football against them. We'll see what that injury does on the other side. Again, I'm gonna do my game preview probably on like Friday, maybe Thursday. So I will look more into them by then. But what I'll say is early on this year, whether it be the Titans, the Cowboys, everybody, I do think we're going to come out more conservative. I don't think you're going to see this team come out and you're going to see the full aggressive offense that I think we all think we will see at some point this year, relatively early, but I don't think it'll be week one. I think the Giants will run the ball more than maybe some people expect week one. I expect a more conservative approach. And the key to me in that game, more so than anything else, is we have to pick up third downs. Because we can't allow Derrick Henry to just wear down our defense. We can't lose the time of possession. We have to find a way to win the time of possession because Henry's going to destroy us in the fourth quarter if we don't. So that to me is the biggest key in that game is converting your third down opportunities, which is always a big key, but specifically in a game like this. So that to me is the biggest key in terms of like a player I'm going to say Barkley. I think they're going to try to run the game, get Barkley involved in the passing game. And I think most games he's going to be the most heavily featured player, but especially early on in the year, I'm going to say Barkley.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, just again, for the reasons we cited, settle down that offensive line, which, by the way, they run blocked really well, I thought, in the preseason. Yeah. So ride that strength in, and time of possession, like you said, is going to be key. The Giants did a good job of that in the preseason, but again, you got to taper that up, temper your enthusiasm there because it was against backups mostly. So, but I do think the running game is probably going to be the feature against the Titans. All right. Welvin, do you think Daniel Jones has the trust, respect of his receivers? He seems to get along with Shep and Wandale, not necessarily the West. I don't know where you're getting that from, Welvin, when you say he doesn't have the trust and that he gets along with two guys and not with the rest. I mean, you'd have to be in the building to really understand that. And I don't think that's true.
He's been a captain the last 3 years, so he has.
Yeah, he's been a captain, so I don't think you can say that he doesn't get along with his receivers. I think, what you're probably asking us is, is he on the same page with all those guys? And I think that's going to continue to take time. I think they're making progress in that regard, but it's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination.
And the other thing I'll say to that, Patricia, is Barkley has always, and he's one of his weapons. Barkley has always gone to bat for Daniel Jones. Like they seem to have a great friendship, and he's always said great things about. I actually watched. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. He did like a 40-minute interview on YouTube with a newer YouTube channel. I think it's like people that know him, but it was a really good interview. And he talked about how much he believes in Daniel Jones and how much he thinks Daniel Jones is a really good quarterback. And I don't think he was full of nonsense. I think he really, truly believes that because he was very open in that interview. It wasn't like a politically correct type interview. So I think he's always gone to bat for Daniel Jones. And you go back to a lot of players that have played for this team. Kyle Rudolph said that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback he's ever played with. I remember that last year when he was a member of the New York Giants. And maybe he was just saying that to say that, but he's played with some good quarterbacks. He played with Kirk Cousins. And I remember him saying that when they went up against Daniel Jones, they were so impressed with him. When we played the Vikings in Daniel Jones' beginning of his career, Kenny Golladay said great things about Daniel Jones. So I don't think I've ever seen any players, maybe people like read into body language. I don't know, but I don't think I've ever seen any of the players on this team show any doubt in Daniel Jones as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's stretching it a little bit, to be honest with you there. But all right, Director Zay, has Daniel Jones been practicing sliding instead of diving headfirst? No, but what Daniel has done, and I applaud him for this, is he's finally recognizing that he doesn't need to bleed out every last yard of a play. He knows when to say when. So I've seen better decisions from him on those plays when he's taken off on a design run or a scramble or whatnot. That I'll take. Would I like to see him slide? Yes, but I'd also like to see him get out of harm's way, get out of bounds. And if he, just live to see the next down is what I've always wanted to see from him. And that's one way to do it.
Yeah, listen, we all get pumped and excited as a fan base when we see Jones do everything in his power to try to win football games. And I'll be the first to say, I live streamed the games. I was jumping for joy and excited when he knocked over the defensive tackle for the 2-point conversion last year. But he's got to get much smarter in that aspect. He just does. He's got to know when to get down. He's got to know when to get out of bounds. He can't continue to take hits at the rate that he has because he's going to continue to have injuries if he does. So I hope that's something he's been practicing on. And that's instinctual too, though. I'll say that. You watch like Kyler Murray, he's got a baseball background. Those guys just have that instinct. They sense when the guy's coming. They know when to get down. He needs to develop that, at least to some degree. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to stay on the football field.
Well, here's the other thing, Chris, that I think played into the equation. I wonder how many times in the past Daniel thought, gee whiz, my talent around me isn't very good. I got to make a play.
I think that has something to do with it.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I think that has something to do with it for sure. He can you blame him for feeling that way? with what he's been provided with. So I do think, and hopefully now, with a better offense around him, a better scheme, he doesn't feel the need to do that as much. We'll see this year.
Right. And Jack Smith says Russell Wilson always gets down. Wake up, Daniel. Doesn't Russell Wilson have a baseball background
too? He's got
a
baseball background as well.
So come on, man.
I think he was drafted relatively early. I know he's on the Yankees. He shows up there every now and again for
Kyler Murray's got a baseball background, and Russell Wilson, I know, do. Daniel does not. So I don't think you can compare apples to apples here.
Yeah.
So
they're just different types of athletes too.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks, we've got a few more minutes because you can see my voice is starting to go up. But so get those last minute questions in. But Chris, overall, how are you feeling as they approach the first week, getting ready for Tennessee? Is there anything that just has you really worried or maybe particularly excited, perhaps?
I'm always excited. I'm always excited for the start of a NFL season, regardless of what I feel my team's going to be. Because in the NFL, that's the magic of the sport. Anything can happen. Every year, there's 2 or 3 surprise teams. So I always hold out a glimmer of hope that maybe we catch the breaks this year. Maybe we're that team that really surprises, like the Eagles did last year. Who's the other team? The Raiders. Most people thought the Raiders were going to win 4 or 5 games, especially after the coaching problems that they had, the off-the-field problems they had. So you never know, right? With a new coaching, maybe we catch people off guard. So I'm always excited. Am I worried? Of course. My God, we are the thinnest team maybe in the NFL. We're very thin. And they're learning on the fly. You're learning a new offensive and defensive scheme. I'm terrified about the second cornerback. And I'm scared about the offensive line early on this year. I think it's going to struggle the first 3, 4, 5 weeks. Guys that have never played with one another. It's going to take some time to gel, I think. So, yeah, I definitely have my concerns with this football team, but I'll be damned if I say I'm not excited. It's a new NFL season. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the injury bug stays, it calms down, because this summer, my goodness, people say, what does this team have to do? And that question came up with Shane and Dable. And, look, football's a violent sport. And some people say, oh, it's the turf, change the turf. Folks, they changed the turf after, I think, the 2019 season. And a lot of the injuries the Giants have had this summer have occurred on grass. So, it's just, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I wish I had an answer for you, but hopefully the Giants don't finish as the leading, the leader in injuries amongst all the NFL teams.
Hopefully. I mean, we have to get some luck this year.
Got to have something.
Some luck. Just like keep a couple of these guys. I'm not even asking for all of them. Keep some of the key players healthy. Last year, Andrew Thomas goes down. Daniel Jones goes down. Saquon Barkley goes down. Galladay, I think, missed some time, if I'm not mistaken. Tony missed some time. Like
Shepard.
I mean, he's a given every year. Like, give me some of them. Some of them. I don't even need all of them. Keep some of them healthy.
I think we might have to do a sacrifice or a rain dance or something like that. I don't know, man. We got to do something.
We got to switch something up. We need to wear like a lucky jersey or a hat, or maybe, listen, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll wear the same underwear for a week if it means that these guys are going to stay healthy every week.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. Well, you know what, my friend, that's going to do it for us, because like I said, my voice is starting to die out a little bit. So, folks, I thank you for tuning in. This is always a fun time to get with Entertainah. We'll have to do this again, my friend.
Let's do it whenever you want to. I don't know if you want to make it Fridays or whenever you want to do it. You let me know.
I mean, normally we do this around lunchtime, but because I had an appointment today, I had to push it to 1:00. But I do appreciate everybody who showed up.
I'll say this right now. Every year, the last couple of years, I have like a stream the night before the first game. If you're free, you don't got to stay on the whole time. You can pop on for 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
I try to circle in content creators, so I'll probably start that at about 8:30. So you're more than welcome to come on for that. Would love to have you on. Like I said, 20 minutes, whatever, pop on. Just talk about the upcoming season, talk to the chat. So there you go. Patricia's going to be on Saturday night. So I'm looking forward to that.
Send me a DM and definitely, and we'll see. Maybe we do this every Friday. We'll see how it goes.
And people seem to like it. So if
you guys who are still listening, if you want to see us every Friday on a live show, we'll do something around, lunchtime or whatever, wherever I can. I know next Friday I've got a kind of a weird schedule, but we'll certainly make it a point, because I enjoy it. I love our chats. So,
for sure.
They're a lot of fun.
Always love talking Giants.
But we got to come up with that jingle. So hopefully somebody comes up with a good jingle.
Entertainah. If there is a musician listening, drop it in the comments below after the live stream. We need a jingle.
We need a jingle, yes. And you will get credit for the jingle. So please come up with something. And no, it can't be to an existing tune. I saw somebody said, oh, what about Dusty Springfield's Wishing and Hoping? You can't now. We'll get slapped by YouTube if we do that. So it's got to be something kind of original, or even if it's just a catchphrase. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm usually pretty good with the catchphrases, so maybe I'll come up with something. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. All right. All right, my friend. This was fun. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the LockedOn Giants podcast. Make sure you keep it here. Next week, we start our regular season coverage, so there'll be a lot to talk about, I'm sure. We'll have the return of Crossover Thursday. We have Twitter Tuesday. We got so much coming on. And then we'll, like I said, hopefully we can fit Chris in and we can do the live show every Friday. That should be a lot of fun. And then I'll jump on his live show when he has it. So thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend and a great holiday.